Okay. So we've got a bunch of people here. I know we're going to have more as time goes on, which is fine. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Marnie Smith. I am the Assistant Director of Graduate Career Services at the Mark School of Public and International Affairs at Baruch College. With me is my colleague Suzanne Grossman, who is the Deputy Director, she's waving, of Career Services at the Mark School. We also, of course, have our distinguished guest, Austin Belcak, with us, who is going to give us a wonderful presentation. We are so happy to have students and alumni from all CUNY schools join us for this event today. Just a little bit about Austin. We are really in for a treat today, you guys. Austin he's a founder of Cultivated Culture. He's been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, Fast Company, and he's helped thousands of job seekers land jobs at amazing places without applying online. So without further ado, Austin, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marnie. So I'm going to share my screen quickly, and then we'll just do a check to make sure that everybody can see it. So can everybody see the deck on the screen? Okay, awesome. And I'm just going to open up the chat here because I do want this to be interactive. So if anybody has any questions or any thoughts as we go, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll keep it up so we can kind of weave that into the conversation here. But yeah, so today we're talking about my favorite thing to chat about, which is landing jobs without applying online. And that sounds like a pretty ambitious goal, right? That almost sounds too good to be true in some cases, especially if you've been trying to get a job through the traditional channels of online applications. And especially if you tried to do that in the last 6 months or so since this whole crazy pandemic started. So I promise you that this is something that's possible, and it's actually a lot easier to do than it might sound if you know what you're doing. So my hope today is to kind of teach you this system that I've developed over the past essentially 6-7 years now at this point that I personally use to get in the door with places like Microsoft and Google and Twitter. And so that's a good segue into who the heck I am and why I'm even qualified to talk about any of this. So for starters, up until about 2 weeks ago, actually, I was a director of partnerships at Microsoft. I just recently left that role to take this business on full time. But I was at Microsoft for over 5 years, and it was an amazing experience, but it was really cool because I actually got to do a lot of the hiring for our team. So I got to see what was going on, not just with me, but with my colleagues. So what types of strategies and resumes and candidates and interview styles, what types of those resonated with the people on my team? Who were they drawn to? What kind of rubbed them the wrong way? And that was great because I got to actually see it happening on the hiring side of a major company that many people aspire to work to. And getting to Microsoft wasn't the easiest thing for me. I graduated from college with a pretty poor GPA, 2.58. I had a biology degree. I was working in healthcare, and I wanted to work in tech. And it was really hard for me to get any traction with the traditional job search process. So I had to develop a system of my own, which we'll talk about in just a second here. But that system effectively allowed me to get interviews and offers with Microsoft, Google, and Twitter. And a lot of people came to me after I started at Microsoft and asked, how I did this, how I made this happen. So I started cultivatedculture.com with the goal of teaching people like you all the same strategies that I learned going through this process, taking a bit of a different approach. And that was about 4 to 5 years ago now. And since then, we've grown the community to now has about 550,000 job seekers in our community. Our strategies have been featured in places like Forbes and Business Insider and all these other publications. But more importantly, we've helped people land jobs at some pretty amazing companies across industries, across company types, from small startups and mom and pop type companies all the way up to Fortune 5, Fortune 10 companies and everything in between. So if there's a company that you're targeting or thinking of, we've likely helped somebody, get an offer there, at least get an interview there. And again, most of these people have done it without applying online. So this is great, right? I have this company and we have a lot of people in the audience, and that's all really cool, right? But it hasn't always been this way. And I think it's important to share a little bit about my story for two reasons. One, it helps provide some context to this system that may be a new approach for most of you. But two, I think it also illustrates that there's nothing different or special about me compared to anybody on this call. Like, I came from pretty much the worst type of background that you could come from an academic and experience standpoint. Obviously, there are other factors at play here, but from an experience and an academic standpoint, graduating college, I was pretty much at the bottom of the barrel. And so if I can do that, if I can make this happen, I can help you make it happen, and you can make it happen for yourself. So in that vein, we can rewind back to actually when I was 4 or 5. And I think, this story may resonate with a lot of people, because what happened when I was 4 or 5? Well, that was about the time when people started asking me what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I think we're all asked that question at a very, once we can start walking and talking, this idea of what we want to do comes into play. But when you're 4 or 5, you can say whatever the heck you want, right? Like, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be, the next Michael Jordan, or whatever it is. And everybody's like, yes, like, you can do any of that. Like, whatever you put your mind to, it's possible. And that makes you feel good, right? And we're excited and we're having fun. But then we get older, and the question doesn't go away. The question persists, but the scope of acceptable answers narrows, right? And so an astronaut may not be realistic. Even being a writer may not be realistic. And we're sort of forced into something that, society or our families tell us is acceptable. But the real problem is that we aren't given the tools to explore what else is out there. So for me, when I was just making this career decision in high school and college, I had no idea you could work for a place like Microsoft without knowing how to code. Or, I didn't even know that like an account manager was a job title that you could hold. And so I thought, I was choosing between the quote TV careers, if you will, that are out there, lawyer, doctor, accountant, finance, investment banker, whatever else it is. All these things that we kind of see and hear and know and feel through media and culture and all this other stuff. And so for me, I chose doctor. I took a biology class. I thought it was interesting. I told my parents I wanted to be a doctor. They were grinning from ear to ear. Like, I'd tell my family friends and they were grinning from ear to ear. And I liked that approval. And so that was my career path. And I went through high school kind of focused on that. I interned at hospitals. I took more science courses. I took AP courses. And I got to college, and college was a bit of a new world for me. I went to boarding school. We didn't get out much, and I get to college, and there's this whole new world out there. And the social side of college was a lot more exciting to me than the idea of becoming a doctor, mainly because the social stuff was fun, but also the doctor stuff wasn't really what I wanted to do. That was sort of something I'd chosen to make other people happy. So immediately, I failed chemistry my freshman year, fall semester. And then spring semester, my freshman year, I failed French. And I got out of freshman year with a 2.78 GPA. So in the upper left corner of the slide there, that's a screenshot of my actual transcript. Not so hot, not many medical schools accepting doctors with a 2.78 these days. So I basically took that same approach to the rest of college. I didn't want to try to dig out of my hole. I didn't really want to explore anything new. I just kind of coasted and slacked off. And by the time I graduated, I had a 2.58 GPA, barely scraped by. I had a job that was essentially dropped into my lap. I didn't interview or apply at any other company outside of the company that I interned with. And I accepted that job sight unseen. So I accepted that job making $35,000 a year. I didn't factor in cost of living, expenses for, just working, commuting, things like that. And that essentially chewed up 80 to 90% of my income. So I didn't have much to live on after that. And I ended up racking up about $15,000 of credit card debt within the first 3 months or so after college. So not, the best start to a career, not the one I had foreseen for myself or had hoped for. And so on top of all this, the job that I had was pretty miserable. My manager treated me like crap. He kept saying, you don't have a future in this industry. You should do something else. You're not smart enough or good enough to do this. And on top of that, the job itself was pretty miserable. So after a certain point, I said, you know what, maybe this isn't right for me. Maybe I do need to make a transition. And this was back in 2013, and this was sort of the golden age of tech, if you will, when a lot of the stuff that surfaced over the last 7, 8 years had not surfaced at that time. Not to say that working in tech is a bad thing by any stretch, but this was really, these companies could do no wrong. They were treating and paying their employees well, and this seemed like an awesome place to target. So that was my goal. I wanted to work at Google, Microsoft, or Facebook, or any one of these companies. But obviously I'm coming from, not the best starting point. So I go to the people I always go to for advice, right? My family, my friends, career services, the internet. And I basically tell people this goal. And, they were kind enough to not laugh in my face in most cases, but I think they were probably wondering how the heck that I thought I could achieve this transition, because this looks a little crazy on paper, right? So they were kind enough to try and give me some advice. And the advice that they gave me is advice that most of us get, right? It's essentially the traditional job search. So you tweak your resume, you tweak your cover letter, you go apply for jobs online, you cross your fingers and hope that somebody gets back to you, and you rinse and repeat. And so that's exactly what I did. I went out there and I tweaked my resume, my cover letter. I applied, I crossed my fingers, and I sent out about 100 apps in the first month, and nothing happened. Like, I got no interviews, I got nothing. So I went back to these people and I said, this isn't working. Like, what else should I do? And they told me, it's a numbers game. You need to apply for more jobs. Like, you're just simply not putting in the volume that you need to put in. And that was a little bit of a red flag for me, because this was the process that was supposed to work. And typically, if somebody tells you to do something and you do it 100 times and it doesn't work a single time, that's not a great ratio. So I thought that was a little weird, but I said, okay, everybody that I trust in my life is telling me to do this, so I will double down. I'm going to apply to 200 jobs this next month, and I'm going to see, what comes out of it. And if it works, great. But if not, something has to change. And so that's exactly what happened. Across that span of 2 months, I applied to over 300 companies online. I got 5 interviews. None of them came from those online apps. They all basically came from, family, friends, or connections in my network, or whatever it was. And inevitably, all 5 of those interviews ended with, we like you, but we have people who actually have real experience. And so, we can't take a chance on you. So 0 offers. And the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again and expecting a different result. And I felt like a crazy person. Like, this was driving me insane. I had no idea what I was doing wrong. There was no feedback. Everybody I trusted in my life was telling me to just keep doing the same thing that wasn't working. And I didn't know what to do. So around that same time, I had a conversation with an alumni of my university. I went to Wake Forest University down in North Carolina. I met this person in Charlotte, and he was working for Uber at the time. And he basically told me that I was taking advice from the wrong people. And that was really interesting to me, because essentially he was saying, look, Austin, you're going to the people that have always given you advice, but those people haven't been where you are now. And they also haven't been where you want to go. And that was a light bulb moment for me. So this is, some of the pictures are a little corny here, so forgive me for that. But he was essentially saying, you're talking to your parents who haven't job searched in 20 years. You're talking to career services folks who were not nearly as advanced or helpful or resourceful as the folks that have set up this call for you all, which I'm very grateful for. And I also was talking to my friends who had been in finance, and they took the traditional route all the way through. So none of these people had been where I'm at now. And they also hadn't been where I wanted to go. None of them were working at Google or had worked at Google. None of them were working at Microsoft or had worked at Microsoft. So I needed to go find people who had done that. And obviously, maybe that's not Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. But when I left that call, I sat down and I made a list of criteria for my dream job. And I essentially wrote down all the things that I wanted. So I wanted to be working for a major tech company. I wanted to be living in a major city like in New York or in LA. I wanted to have flexibility with, where I worked, when I worked, all that good stuff. I wanted to be making a 6-figure salary, and I wanted to do that before I was 26, because I didn't want to wait till I was 40 for this stuff to come to fruition. And so I took these criteria and I went out and I found people who already checked all these boxes. And then I took it a step further. I also tried to find people who checked these boxes who came from a non-traditional background. So who worked at Microsoft, that lived in San Francisco, and seemed to be working in a role that made a certain amount of money, and also came from a non-traditional background. And Marty mentioned, do these techniques. Well, you said they work across industries, and that's absolutely true. Like when we think about where you are and where you want to go, you don't have to be changing industries necessarily, or you could be changing industries completely. But really, at the end of the day, no matter what you want to do, whether it's a career move, whether it's starting a business, whether it's starting a project, if you can find people who have already had success going down the same path that you're about to walk, that person's advice is going to be the best advice that you can get, because they know exactly what you're trying to do, what you're going to be up against, and the best way to overcome that. And so not all advice is created equal. And we want to go find the people who will give us the best advice because they know what they're going through, whether or not we know those people right now or not, whether or not they're in our meaningful network or not. And so that's exactly what I did. I went and I reached out to all these people who met these criteria and also came from a non-traditional background. And I talked to about 20 or 30 of them. And I basically just sent them a note that said, hey, I'm really interested in how you made this transition. It's really impressive. I'd love to learn more. And I talked to all of them, and I listened to their stories, and I tried to tease out essentially, common threads. And I tried to cherry pick strategies that I thought would play to my strengths. And two really important things came up. The first was every single person that I talked to had gotten a referral into their roles. They hadn't applied for a job online. Instead, they'd found somebody who they may or may not have known at the time. It may have been a stranger that they built a relationship with, but they got referred into this job. Second, a lot of these people went above and beyond, or stepped outside of the traditional box of a resume or a cover letter to illustrate their value. And both of those things really resonated with me, because clearly what I was doing wasn't working, and I felt like my value wasn't being perceived. And so I said, let me tear apart this whole hiring process. Like, I'm going to remove the limitations from my targets. I'm going to take these two ideas that I just learned, and I'm going to go test them and get as large of a sample size as I can across every stage of the job search process. And so that's exactly what I did. I started interviewing and applying and building relationships with people at all different types of companies all over the place. And my sole goal was to experiment and test and figure out how this whole process worked from end to end. And it took a while. There was a lot of failure. There was a lot of rejection. There was a lot of mistakes. Mistakes were made, for sure. But all those things led to a lot of learnings, which eventually distilled itself into the system that I now teach people today, which effectively allowed me to pick and choose where I landed interviews and eventually where I landed offers. So the timeline here, you can sort of see back in 2013 when I started, my salary wasn't so high, and I was going on, applying to a lot of places, going on a lot of interviews just to teach myself this system. And I did that for about a year. And through that year and through the learnings, I was able to go on fewer interviews with companies that were of just about the highest quality that you could think of. So Google, Twitter, Microsoft, places like that were really in my wheelhouse. And I do think it's important to note that the dream is not always Google, Microsoft, or Twitter. Like, that was my dream. But whatever your goal is, you can pick and choose to land interviews at those companies. You don't have to work at a Fortune 500 company to be successful or to be happy. I think that's important to note. But for me, I was going on far fewer interviews with the places that I wanted to work for. So I was much happier, and I ended up landing offers from these places as well. And that skyrocketed my salary. So when I landed my job at Microsoft, my salary doubled, and it was effectively about 500% more than I was making when I landed my first job there, which I showed you all in the a couple slides ago. And so that system that took me here is the system that I'm going to walk you through today in about as much time as we have to do that. So this is just a little bit of context of where I came from, what I went through, and how this system got started. And I think the important thing to take away is that, if I can do this, it wasn't like I had connections or contacts or family friends at any of these companies, and I was coming from a totally different industry. And I was still able to work my way in here. So if that's the case for me, you all can absolutely do this too. So what does this formula look like? Well, the first step is to get clear on where you want to go. And we could have a whole presentation just on this. And I actually have a framework that I use with a lot of people that I work with on how to figure out what your purpose is and what career path is right for you. And I'll send that out at the end of the presentation. But I think, this is a sticking point for a lot of the people that I talk to. They tell me, hey, Austin, all of your stuff sounds great, but I have no idea where the heck I want to go. I don't know what I'm passionate about. And I think passion is a little bit of a misunderstood concept. We're sort of taught and told by the media and this content that we consume that following your passion leads to success. Like you do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But we're also sort of told that passion, or we're made to feel that passion is like this thing that hits you in the middle of the night like a lightning bolt. You like jump up in bed and you're like, oh my God, like I was supposed to create amazing user experiences on websites. Like that's what I was meant to do. And like, there's just no way you're going to know that unless you've actually gone out and done it. So like for me, if you talked to me 6 years ago, I would have never told you that teaching people how to land jobs was something I was passionate about. But what happened was I went through it myself, and then I started sharing some of the information, and people told me that it was helpful and that they liked it. And so that feedback made me feel good and made me invest more. And that cycle continued. And all of a sudden that passion developed. So for me, passion is really found through action. And a lot of this stuff requires work. Like you're not just going to suddenly figure out what you're passionate about. You need to actually get out there and take action and dip your toe in the water in a meaningful way, not just like reading a book or taking a course, but actually starting a project or, volunteering somewhere, interning somewhere where you can dip your toe in the water in a certain industry or a role and really see what it's like. Because you don't want to go through the job search process and have to start over. Like the job search process is really hard and it takes a long time. And the worst thing that you can do is do the whole thing and then end up in a job that you hate and have to start over again. And so like the thing I want to stress most here is it seems like you're slowing down by trying to figure out where you want to go at the beginning, but it's going to be so helpful to you in the long run to understand where you want to go and what you're passionate about and what your purpose is at the beginning, because you can have much more of a direct career path and a direct trajectory, and you can focus 100% of your energy on that path. And that can change as you get older, but knowing generally where you want to go and what makes you happy now is a great place to start. So that's my little tangent. And thank you, Victoria, for mentioning the podcast. Adam Grant is awesome. So I give that 2 thumbs up for sure. So right here, we're just gonna, say that this account manager role at Google is what we're excited about. This is what I was excited about. This is what I was targeting. So we'll use this as an example. And so when you're thinking about getting started and finding your role, one, you want to understand what type of job you want to work in. Do you want to be an accountant? Do you want to be a software engineer? Do you want to be an account manager? And then where do you want to be that thing? What industry, what types of companies? So I typically recommend that people start with a list of 10 to 15 target companies for this process. So instead of, let's say if you're applying online, you go 100 miles wide and 1 mile deep, right? You send out 100 resumes, maybe you tweak like a couple of sentences, a couple of words, and you just keep sending them out. Instead, we're going to shrink that down and we're going to go 10 miles wide or 1 mile wide rather, and 100 miles deep. So we're going to learn everything we can about these 10 to 15 companies. And we're really going to be able to position ourselves well as a candidate because of that. So you have your 10 to 15 companies. That's our starting point. Hopefully they have some roles open that you're looking for, but even if they don't, it's still worth going through this process with that company because they're always growing. You never know when they're going to add more roles. Then next, we want to go find contacts. So the cool part about this process is we actually have some predictability. So the worst part of applying online for me was that, I could apply to 5 places, 50 places, or 500 places, and I couldn't tell any of you with confidence how many interviews would come out of those applications. And that was the most frustrating part to me. So the cool part about this process and this strategy is that we have a lot more control and predictability around each of the steps. So for me, when I was working at Microsoft would come to me and they would say, hey, Austin, you got to sell X dollars of Microsoft stuff, or, maybe go find a job somewhere else. They were nicer about it, but that's the general gist of sales. And so I couldn't rely on getting lucky or the white whale coming through every quarter, every year, whatever it was. I needed a strategy. So what I would do is I would look at all the steps in the sales process, and I would look at my success rates for every single step. And then I would start with the end goal. So how many deals do I need to close based on my average deal size? And then taking my success rates, working my way back to a set of steps, the number of steps, or sorry, the number of the first step that I needed to take in order to end up going down the funnel with that number of end results or outputs that I needed. So we can do that with the job search too. And just by way of using averages and an example here, this is sort of what I see with the people that I work with, again, on average. But let's say you want 2 job offers and your success rate from final round to offer is 33%. That means you need 6 final round interviews to put yourself in a good position to land 2 offers. But not every interview you go on is going to result in a final round. There's going to be some attrition there. So we need a little bit, we need a buffer. And let's say your success rate from first round interview to final round is also 33%. That means we need around 18 first round interviews, call it 15 to 20 first round interviews to get those 6 finals, those 2 offers. And hopefully these interviews are coming through referrals. That's the whole point of this process. And so we need to talk to at least 18 people, but not everybody we talk to is going to refer us in. So the number that I see is typically 30 to 50. I want to call them conversations, but I think engagements might be a better word, because you don't need to have 50, 30-minute Zoom calls with people to make this happen. Like, that's intense. That's a lot. Instead, there's a lot of ways to have conversations. It could be a Zoom call. It could also be a connection, through comments on LinkedIn. It could be an email exchange back and forth. There's a lot of different ways to have these conversations, but 30 to 50 conversations in some capacity is probably going to net you those 15 to 20 first round interviews via referral. But not everybody we reach out to is going to reply to us, right? And when you start, you'll probably have like a 10 to 15% response rate. You can increase that to around 25 to 30 as you start following up, and if you're A/B testing your emails and stuff like that. So using that roughly 30 to 33%, we can back into 30 conversations, or 50 conversations rather, bump that up to around 150 people we need to reach out to. So we hit up 150 people, we have 30 to 50 conversations, we get 15 to 20 first round interviews, we get, those 6 final rounds, and hopefully that leads to 2 offers because of the success rates we know we have. So my recommendation is to start with a minimum of 150 contacts. Now, when we think about 10 to 15 target companies, that's basically 10 to 15 people at each of those 10 to 15 companies. And this is really the lever that you have to maximize success. The more people you reach out to, the better your chances of a connection, better chance you have of finding somebody who will refer you in. So don't be shy to go higher here. But this is a great starting point. This is a great minimum where we start to see the odds swing into the candidate's favor. And the cool part about this is you can keep track of your own metrics. So maybe you have a higher percent chance of, or maybe your percentage of converting conversations to first round interviews is higher than 33% or 36%. So you can add that in here, and you can just keep this forever. The next time you go in through a job search, you can look at your success rates from last time and say, okay, let me start with the end and work my way back. And here's how many people I need to reach out to. So you'll just have a lot more control over this entire process. And you'll also get a better understanding of where things are working for you and where things aren't, and where you may need some help. So when we think about these people, we're finding 15 people at each company, minimum of 150. Who are we looking for? Well, in most cases, it's not a recruiter. It's not somebody in HR, unless you want to be a recruiter or unless you want to work in HR, in which case that's totally fine. But those are the people that most folks gravitate to. Most job seekers say, I need to get in touch with a recruiter. I need to get in touch with somebody from HR. And those people tend to be really, really busy. They tend to be swamped with everybody else like you who had that same idea. But also the folks who are recruiting for roles, they're not necessarily in the room where the hiring decision is made. So in no way am I saying this to demean what recruiters do. Recruiters do amazing work, and they help people land fantastic roles. And like, this whole job search process wouldn't operate without them. But for our purposes here, if we're going to invest a lot of time into building relationships, we want to go for people who aren't being blasted with emails, and 2, may be able to have more influence over that final hiring decision. So that is going to be the person who is either going to be your manager if you got hired, working on your same team as a peer or colleague, or anybody who will either be working closely with that team or who can influence that end hiring decision. So the best place to start here is by typing in the target job title that you're aiming for and using some of the filters on LinkedIn to dial this in. So just by way of example, let's say we can, we're looking for a job as an engineer at SpaceX in Los Angeles. Well, if we type that in, and we wouldn't type in the whole thing, maybe you just type in engineer and then you use, this company filter to filter for SpaceX and location for Los Angeles. We're going to have a whole list of people here who meet this criteria. Now, you can tweak some of these filters. For example, you can see if you have a first connection with somebody. There's also an all filters button that's kind of off to the right, which isn't in the screenshot here. And there's actually an alumni filter, or where they went to college. So you could put Baruch in there and see if anybody comes up. There's a whole lot of ways to use these filters if you get creative. And you can narrow this list down, right? We have 3,300 results. Probably not reasonable to go through all of them, and not all of them are going to be relevant, but adding those extra layers are going to help you get to people who you have a better chance of connecting with. And then you're just going to go through their profiles and you're going to look for something that you can latch onto, like something interesting in their background that you can use to create a connection. And also you want to see if they're, working on the project or on the team that you would potentially be working on. That's not always very clear. And again, this is why we want to reach out to more people, because you could talk to, let's say, Kelly here. And if Kelly isn't the right person, you can say, well, hey, Kelly, would you mind introducing me to the person that is the right person, or the person who's on this team? And then maybe you get that warm intro from Kelly, which is, increasing your odds of getting a reply back because it's a warm introduction. So again, more people you talk to, better your chances are. But from the get-go, we want to get, as close as we can to the people who would be on that team who can influence that hiring decision. So what do we do next? Well, I like to basically capture all these people's information. And so I just use a Google Sheet for this. I name it, contact tracker or whatever you want. And I have the person's name, I have their title, I have their email, I have their company, I have a link to their LinkedIn profile. I have their location, and I typically have some notes. So if I do know that, hey, this person's a Baruch alumni, so let me make sure to mention that in my outreach. I'm going to put that in the notes section. So the key here, all this stuff you can find on their LinkedIn profile, except for maybe email. And I personally recommend using email as your primary method of outreach. It just tends to have better end-to-end response rates than LinkedIn. Everybody has a LinkedIn profile. Not everybody's active on LinkedIn, whereas pretty much every professional is on their email all day, every day. That's how they do business. So you're just going to have a better chance of getting in front of them when you use their email. But if we want to do that, we need to find their email. So I like to use this tool called mailscoop.io, where you just plug in somebody's first and last name and then a link to their company's website. You hit find it, and Mailscoop will run a search, and it will give you either their email or it will make a guess. It's not infallible. The way that these email lookup tools work, they're never going to be 100% accurate. So you definitely want to try to verify it. And if you can't find their email, you can then use LinkedIn as a backup. That's totally fine. But sending somebody an email just gives us a better shot of getting in touch with them. So I do recommend, at least trying to find their address and sending them a note. So once we have all this information, we're going to drop it into the doc here. And Victoria mentioned, that there are a lot of ways to go about finding emails. So if you go to mailscoop.com and you scroll down below the tool, there's a bunch of info there. But some people have emails on their LinkedIn profile. Sometimes you can go find, if you go use a tool like hunter.io, you can find the format for the company and you can play a bit of a guessing game. Mailtester.com will allow you to verify these emails. So I'll just type in mailtester.com here. And that will allow you to know if it actually is their email or not. So Mailscoop's a great place to start. If you can't find it, you can do a little bit of research. I don't want you guys spending like 20 minutes to try and find one person's email unless you're like absolutely sure that they're the hiring manager. But once you have all this information ready, it's time to reach out. Now, the last thing I'll say is I like to do this all up front. So I like to find my 150 contacts all in one shot. Because once we start reaching out, we introduce more variables into the process, and the process, is no longer 100% in our control. So I like to do what's in my control first. So I have the peace of mind to know that all the research is done, like all the people have been found, the target companies, where I want to go, and then I can start reaching out. And then, I can focus 100% of my time on building these relationships. So how do we do that? Well, the biggest mistake that people make when they reach out is using what I call a me mindset. And so a me mindset is when you reach out to somebody and you say, can you help me get a job? Or, I saw you have this open role on your website. Can you introduce me to the person, or can you pass along my resume? Or even, can you review my resume? So what's going on here? Basically, you are, or, that sounds a little accusatory. The person sending this email is showing up and basically saying, hey, we've never met before, but I'd appreciate it if you would go to your boss and tell them that I am worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and my work is going to be flawless and above expectations, despite the fact that we've never talked outside this email. And that's not a realistic ask. It's also not a great way to start a relationship. So my view here and my recommendation for your mindset is you're not looking to win the job on one email or even one conversation. All you're looking to do is send an email to get the conversation started. And then you're looking to build the relationship. So why do we do that, and how do we do that? Well, when we think about how relationships start, all the great relationships in our lives, like we all know that person who like doesn't show up to class and like always asks you for your notes or something along those lines, where they're always asking you for something, and then like the one time you ask them for something, they're nowhere to be found, or they're talking behind your back, or they don't include you in X, Y, and Z things. And that person is not somebody we keep around. Whereas, the people that we do like, that we do have a connection with, they're willing to go out of the way to help us without the expectation of reciprocity. They show interest in us. We have common ground, common goals, common values, things like that. And so the way you build relationships with somebody new is no different than the way you've built relationships or formed relationships in any other aspect of your life. And so how do we do it in the professional world? Well, the biggest and best thing you can do is start by making it about the other person and start by trying to add value to them. So I think of relationships like a social bank account. So, back when I was in my first job and I had a bunch of credit card debt, something that was very common to me was overdrawing my bank account. And that's why I love this example. So if you have if an ask on your end costs you 20 social dollars, so if an ask for a referral costs you 20 social dollars, let's say. If you try to make that ask up front out of nowhere with zero social dollars in your bank account, you're going to overdraw your account. But if you work to make small deposits over time, you're going to get up to $20, and then you can make that withdrawal comfortably. You can feel confident about that. So what do those deposits look like? Well, the simplest form of something is just recognizing somebody for something they've done. So instead of emailing, let's say me, and saying, hey, Austin, I saw that you were at Microsoft. They have this open role that I'm interested in. Can you pass my resume along? Maybe you email me and you say, hey, Austin, I was looking at your profile and I saw you made this transition from healthcare into advertising technology. Like, that's really impressive. I'd love to learn a little bit more about that. Do you have a couple of minutes to chat? And so what's going on here? Like, both of those questions are getting at the same end goal, which is, let me have a conversation with you, let me learn more, and then hopefully you'll help me out. But one of them takes a very different approach than the other. One of them is focused on the other person and shows that you've done some research on them. So a friend of mine actually summed this up really well. And she said, if you want 15 minutes of my time, show me that you spent at least 15 minutes to earn it. And that is done through research. That's done through understanding things about the person that you're emailing. And so that could be an alumni connection. That could be something interesting in their background. That could be a project they're working on. It could be, a post or an article that they shared or that they wrote. It could be a career transition that they made. It could be anything that allows you to make it about them. But that is the way that you want to lead. So as a quick email template here, this is one of the ones that I recommend that I use with my clients. And before we get to the template, just talking to a couple of things on the right-hand side. When we send cold emails, we can actually improve our chances by using data. So there's a tool out there called Boomerang. And Boomerang is a Gmail extension. And they have about 40 to 60 million emails come through their tool every year. And they look at those emails and they try to figure out what aspects of those emails lead to the best response rates. And so essentially what they found is that when you write at a 5th grade level, you tend to get better response rates. So this doesn't mean you should be writing like a child, but instead you should be using clear, plain, simple language. So a lot of job seekers I see will send an email, dear Mr. Belcak, I'm writing to, formally congratulate you on your transition from Microsoft, as well as, put my name in the hat for blah, 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 this role. That makes you sound more like a robot than a person. And it's just a little overly formal. So instead, if I just wrote a note and said, hi, Austin, I saw you made the transition from healthcare to Microsoft, and that was really, really impressive. I'd love to learn more. That's very plain. That's very simple language. That's easy to scan and digest. Next, adding some positive emotion in here tends to improve response rates as well. So this doesn't have to be anything crazy. Hope you're having a great week! Exclamation point. Letting them know that their time is valuable, letting them know that you acknowledge, and appreciate them, recognizing them for something they've done in an upbeat way, just generally using upbeat language. That's going to help improve your response rates. Then the length. So 75 to 125 words is the sweet spot. I don't see too many candidates going on the lower end of that scale. I do see a lot of people going on the higher end. So a lot of people feel like they have to tell their life story in order for the person on the other end to like comprehend why this email is coming to their inbox. And that's not really true. At the end of the day, people reading these emails are busy and they want to, they may want to help, but they want you to get to the point. So I think 100, what I found is 105 to 125 words tends to be the sweet spot where you're able to clearly articulate what you're going for without, going too crazy with a wall of text that nobody wants to read. And then finally, using a subjective subject line, and usually the shorter the better, tends to work well. So, I've gotten thousands of emails at this point that say referral at Microsoft, and I know exactly what's in that email, and I don't want to read it, and that tends to go right to the archive folder. So we can't get responses if we don't get opens, right? And sometimes, tipping our hand in the subject line, goes to that auto archive. So quick question is the subject line that I like to use. It's vague, it's short, it gets people interested. They click it, they open it up, and now boom, we have a chance for them to read it and reply. So this is the template that I typically recommend, and it's what I would say about any email template that you find is it's more of a gist than it is a word for word copy paste. So something along the lines of like, hey, so-and-so, my name is Austin, and here's how I found your information. I found you while I was looking for people who made the transition from healthcare to technology, or I saw that you're a Baruch alumni working in this space, and I was looking for Baruch alumni working in that space. I hope you don't mind me reaching out of the blue. Then we want to build them up. We want to show them that we've done our research. So, I saw that, maybe you're talking about me again. I saw that you made this transition, or you have extensive experience making the transition from healthcare into technology. And I know that's not an easy transition. I'm sure a lot of people doubted your experience. I'm sure a lot of people, told you that you didn't have any formal experience. So why would you be in this space? And so I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you made that transition. And then finally, at the end, I put in what I call an exit clause. So a lot of people will say stuff like thanks in advance or eagerly awaiting your reply or whatever it is. And that puts a lot of pressure on the person that you're emailing. So instead, I like to acknowledge that like, hey, I know you're busy and I know your time is valuable. And so if you don't have time for this, that's okay. So I give them an out. But then I say, I'd be really grateful if you do have 5 minutes, I'd be really grateful for any advice that you have. And that tends to actually boost response rates when you acknowledge that this is a big ask coming from a stranger. So this is the type of email that I'd send. And I have a couple other templates on the website if you want to check them out. But again, my recommendation is if you really want to get in the weeds here, pick 3 templates and try to have a fundamentally different approach to your outreach in each of those 3 templates. And then send each template to 20 people and then look at your open rates and your response rates, or better yet, look at how many meetings you book, and then delete the template with the lowest performance and replace it with another version of the template that's performing best. And then rinse and repeat for 20 more emails. And if you do that, what you're going to do is get a better understanding of what types of emails and what approaches give you better response rates. And so anytime you get an opportunity to test something, try something new, experiment, that is where you're going to win out. And again, my whole rule of thumb with the job search is if it's easy for you to do, it's just as easy for somebody else to do. So like lots of people have seen this template before. So again, this is a great starting point, but I would tweak this. I would look more at like, what are we doing with each of the 3 sections? And then I would tweak that to kind of match your voice and your personality and your tone rather than just a straight copy paste. So I think that's worth noting. And as you send these emails out, you're going to start booking conversations. Now, this is something, again, that we could spend a whole multiple hours talking about in a session, how to have these conversations. But essentially, your goal is getting on the phone and doing 2 things. One, you want to build a rapport with this person. You want to start building the relationship. But 2, you want to uncover some more information about what they care about, what their challenges are, what their goals are, things that you can add value against. So I typically like to show up to these calls, and in the first half of the call, I just like to kick it off with what I emailed them about. So, hey, Austin, thanks so much for taking the time to get on the phone with me. Again, I was really impressed with your experience going from healthcare to technology. Can you tell me a little bit more about that transition? Like, why did you want to go to technology and how did you make it happen? And so that gives the other person runway to essentially, talk about themselves. And when we talk about ourselves, we tend to warm ourselves up and we tend to be more receptive. And that's exactly what, you and I, the job seeker in this scenario, want. And then in the back half of the conversation, I try to pivot into questions like, tell me about the biggest challenge your team is facing, or, what are you most excited about over the next 6 months? Or better yet, if you've done some research, which we'll talk about in a second, but if you've done some research prior to this conversation, you can bring that in. You could say, hey, I just was listening to this keynote that your CEO was giving, and they mentioned this challenge or this initiative. Tell me a little bit more about how your team plays into that. And so we're trying to work to get information around challenges and goals and initiatives, because that's, if there's an open role, you can bet that that role has something to do with those challenges or those initiatives. And that's where you can really add relevant value. So this is where practice makes perfect. The more conversations you have, the more comfortable and the better you'll get with this. It may feel a little weird. It may feel a little uncomfortable at first, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So then you have this conversation and you learn about this information, right? Challenges, goals, et cetera. Then we want to do some deeper research. So how do we do that? Well, there's a couple of different ways depending on the company that you're targeting. So we'll start with 2 ways for public companies and then 2 ways that work for both private and public companies. So the first is listening to earnings calls. Every public company has to report out their earnings on a quarterly basis. And so they make that call. They basically do that on a conference call, which they make public. Anybody can listen to it. And it typically has a recording. Sometimes it has a transcript. Sometimes it has a deck. There's a lot of information you can learn from this, because the company is essentially saying, hey, here's what happened last quarter. Here's why it was good or bad. Here are the challenges we're facing because of that. Here are the initiatives we're driving, and here are the goals that we have for the next quarter. So all the stuff that we care about kind of wrapped up into one high-level call. You can easily find it just by typing in the company name and investor relations. And then you want to look for this events and presentations link here. And then you'll be able to find, a video or a webcast or something that looks like this, where you get the company's executives talking about their company and what's coming up next. So that tends to be really valuable. And the next site I really like is seekingalpha.com. So Seeking Alpha is essentially like a Google Finance and a medium.com kind of smashed into one. And what I mean by that is Seeking Alpha has news, which you can see kind of on the bottom right-hand side of this screenshot. And news is that objective stuff, right? This company hit its earnings, or they closed this deal, or they have this new product. Like, these are things that are happening. But then on the left-hand side, you have this analysis section where financial analysts are coming in and they're basically talking about what's going on with that news. Here's why it's really good for the company. Here's why it's really bad for the company. And so by reading through the analysis, you're going to understand what the opinions are out there, and you're also going to help form your own opinion. And so now you can come to the table and ask a question like, I was listening to your CEO's, keynote, and they said this initiative is rolling out. And I went and did some research, and it looks like the financial analysts are saying that this may be a challenge. How are you all thinking about dealing with that challenge? And that question is a lot more compelling than, what's a day in your life like at Microsoft, Austin? Like, that shows me that you've done your research and you have an idea of what you're talking about. And that's going to lead to me giving you a better answer and kind of having a little bit more faith in you and what you bring to the table. In terms of private companies, they tend to be a little bit different. There's not as much information available on them. So a couple of the ways that I like to research private companies as well as public companies are interviews. So anytime I can get a podcast or an interview with an executive, I love that. And so this is super easy. You can just type in, the company name and then leadership team into Google. It should pop right up. You can see who runs the place. You can punch in all their names plus interview or podcast into YouTube or into Google, and you can see what comes up. And these interviews are amazing because you get this person talking about their company for 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is. And when you do that, you're going to hear the language they use. So you can understand the acronyms they use and the way they speak about their products and their goals. And that can be really, really powerful because, again, you probably heard the term like, oh, now you're speaking my language. Like that phrase is rooted in a psychological principle called mirroring, which actually has been proven to play a big role in relationship building. So if I can mirror the language that you use internally as a candidate, I sound a lot more like I know what I'm talking about. I earn a lot more of your trust and I give myself credibility. On top of that, I like to go do some research. So I like to dig through social media comments, or I like to try to find communities where people are talking about this company, maybe on a place like Reddit or on Slack or a Discord or something like that. And I just want to get in there and see, what these people are talking about. App reviews are another great place to do this. And honestly, if you can get your own hands on the product, if you can sign up for this company's product and get hands on yourself, like all of this stuff is a great way for you to understand, what the customers are talking about, what's going on with the product, what's good about it, what's bad about it. And you can also do the same thing with their competitors to get that, competitive landscape. And then what we're going to do is take all this information and we are going to use it to try and either solve or add value to some of the things that your contact mentioned. So we're not always going to be able to solve a problem, and that's not necessarily the expectation. What we're trying to do here is create a better illustration of our value. So I think one of the big issues with the current process is that, like, we're all like individual, diverse, like awesome human beings with personalities and interests and hobbies and viewpoints and values. And it's just so hard to quantify that and qualify that on a resume, like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And so it's no wonder that so much stuff gets lost in translation. On top of the fact that, we use this weird resume language that we don't use anywhere else. And then, it's just not a good way to quantify value. Like when I was younger, I played soccer, and I would, every fall we'd have tryouts for the team. And like, I didn't show up to the tryouts with a piece of paper that was like, hey, Austin scored like 4 goals last year and can kick the ball 30 yards. Like, I went and played soccer, and the coach was like, yeah, you're good enough. Or like, no, you're not, better luck next year. And we just don't get the chance to do that in the job search, at least through the traditional process. But we can create that opportunity for ourselves using something that I call a value validation project. So a value validation project is essentially a deliverable that you put together that illustrates your value. And hopefully there's 2 key components here. You are illustrating your value as one, but you are illustrating it in the context of what the company needs. And that's where that research and these conversations have come into play. Hopefully you've uncovered what this company needs. And then you can go put together something that showcases why you're the best person for this role. So I just want to give you a quick example here. And I think I may be sharing my, just the deck here. So let me do my full screen. All right. And let me just pull up this deck. So can you all see a slide that says away on it? Yeah. All right, cool. So this was a value validation project that one of my clients put together. And essentially, if you're not familiar with Away, they are they're a luggage company founded by 2 ex-Warby Parker employees. They basically wanted to take the Warby Parker model to luggage. Not only did they want to create a better, more affordable suitcase, but they wanted to just elevate the travel experience for everybody in general. So when they thought about doing this, they came up with this mission statement, which is getting away means getting the most out of every trip to come. That's the idea behind this company. So again, not just about luggage, it's about getting the most out of every trip. So my client wanted to work there, and she put together this deck that was basically, this is an example of a value validation project. But she essentially said, okay, these are going to be some opportunities for a way to solve problems for millennial travelers. And she starts with the mission. So she's saying, hey, I understand what your mission is. And I'm leading with this slide because I want you to know that I understand your mission, and that the ideas that are going to come in the rest of the slides are also rooted in this mission. So we're sort of teeing it up, and we're aligning ourselves with Away luggage in this case. Next, she went out and she surveyed 15 people who are in Away's target demographic. So she listened to some podcasts, she did some research, she understood, what type of customer Away luggage was targeting, and they truly do target millennials. So she went out and she talked to 15 millennials. Between all of us, she just went and surveyed 15 of her friends. Her friends are millennials, and they like to travel, and they're in this demographic. I'm saying that to you all because this doesn't have to be anything too crazy, right? Like friends, family members, that's a great place to start. But she went and started with those people, and she summarized her findings, she summarized their pain points, and she summarized some opportunities. And basically what she found was that millennials love to travel more than other generations. They really like extra benefits, and they're loyal to rewards programs that help improve their experience and also give them the most bang for their buck in terms of benefits. So then she went out and backed it up with data. So the more data that you can use, the more compelling your project is going to be. You don't want people to think like, hey, I just came up with this in the shower. You want to actually be able to like say, hey, this is rooted in industry trends and data and stuff like that. So she shared some stats that backed up those findings. 55% of millennials are planning to travel over the next 12 months compared to, Gen X or baby boomers. 60% are willing to upgrade their experience. 68% will remain loyal to a rewards program, so on and so forth. All this data that's backing up her claims. And then she includes what I call a table of contents slide, which is essentially a slide that summarizes like, hey, here are the ideas that we're going to talk about. So in this case, she mapped out the entire travel journey from planning all the way to unpacking at your destination. And this little tan dot is, what we're going to talk about. So around planning, packing, and waiting for boarding. So for pain point number one, her whole thing was, there's a lot of there are a lot of apps you need to travel. You need your airline app for your boarding pass. You need your hotel app for your hotel room. You need your Uber or Lyft app to get to and from the airport. And then you need your credit card app to get in the lounge. And and then you need your weather app and your currency converter. And like we're up to like 8 apps. So, what if Away created some partnerships and housed all of that under one app? Maybe you just have an Away app that handles a lot of that stuff for you. It's all, your boarding pass is right there. You can schedule your Lyft or Uber. You could check into your hotel and have your digital room key all in the Away app. That could be really interesting. For number two, how can we increase the perceived value of the suitcase? We all like getting extra things for our money, right? So what if, one example, when you go on the plane, the worst thing is when you pull the travel blanket out and there's like somebody else's hair on it. And then you're like, I don't want to sleep on this for 8 hours. But what if you had your own Away blanket that was a little more comfortable and it was yours and you washed it and you kind of knew where it had been? Or what if, instead of having like a Ziploc bag, you had a clear Away branded bag. So you already have something to put your liquids in. But then when you put that in line at security, everybody else in security can see that big Away logo. Free marketing. And then finally, this is my favorite idea that we came up with, but what if, people love lounges, right? So, but not everybody has like a Platinum Amex card or wants a Platinum Amex card. And so what if Away, went to JFK and set up a pop-up lounge? And instead of showing your American Express card, you just roll up with your Away suitcase and that's your entry point to the lounge. And now you get comfy seating and free Wi-Fi and free drinks and snacks and stuff like that. And everybody's walking by and they're like, whoa, what's that? Like, who are all those people? And then it's like, boom, there's the Away lounge sign. So she came up with a bunch of these ideas and she sent this deck over to the people that she was connecting with. And that's how she got in the door. People were super impressed with these ideas because and this person, by the way, was coming from a background. She was working in jewelry and fine arts in retail. So this was a pretty big switch into the tech space. And this deck allowed her to basically say, hey, here's what I'm capable of. Here's the ideas that I bring to the table. And so doing something like this is so much more compelling than really anything that you could put on a resume. So you still do need a great resume. Don't get me wrong. You still need the basics. But if you want to go above and beyond and have a better chance of getting in the door, especially if you're changing careers or you're a non-traditional candidate, putting together something like a value validation project can be really, really helpful. And this is just one example. So what tends to happen is people want to know more about value validation projects and how do I do it for my specific case and stuff like that. I do have an article on VVPs and I do talk a lot about them. For the sake of time, I want to make sure we have time for questions. But that is really, the whole system in a nutshell. So essentially, what we're looking to do here is we're looking to think about the target companies that we want to work for. Again, we're not settling for a job here. We're really focused on, here are the companies that I'm excited about. They're in the industry I want to work for. They have the jobs that I want to work in. These are places that I would be pumped about, not just here's who decided to bring me in for an interview because, they looked at my online application. Then we want to go find 10 to 15 people who are decision makers at this company, people who can influence your ability to get hired. And we want to reach out to them. We want to make the outreach about them. We want to do our research on them. And we want to work to understand who they are, but also what they care about and what their company cares about, those problems, those challenges, those initiatives. And we want to go do a ton of research and we want to understand more about those challenges and those problems. And then we want to think about ways that we can add value. And so if you do that and you come up with a value validation project and you build a relationship with the decision maker, you're going to get referred into more roles and your value is going to be so much more clear than everybody else who's still relying on that weird resume language and that 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper to, tell the whole story of who they are as a person. You're just going to have so much of an easier time doing this. So this is the exact system that I used, and I think if you start using this system, you're going to see results. This is the same system that we teach everybody that comes through our community. But I know I threw a ton of information at you, so I'm going to pause there. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to see if you all have any questions. But thank you so much for sitting through the whole presentation with me, taking the time out of your day. I really do appreciate it, and I'm happy to answer anything that popped up. It seems like there's a bunch of comments coming through, so I'm gonna pull those up real fast.
Hey Austin, yeah. So I've been keeping track. First of all, thank you for an amazing presentation. It's been really
For sure.
helpful. So someone asked, at what point are you sending the value validation project? Like, is it something you present in an interview? Is it something you put in your application?
Yeah, great question. So the value validation project really comes when you've gotten some sort of commitment from the other side. So what I mean by that is commitment to me is defined by two things. Either you have a formal interview, which is great, or you've connected with somebody and had a conversation with somebody that you truly think will go to bat for you. So that doesn't mean they've already referred you in or anything, but if you had a conversation, you get that vibe of like, I think that if I continue this relationship, like this person will be an advocate for me. Uh, I'm creating a value validation project for that company. Now, when you send it, it's early and often is a good rule. So, if I can get it to that contact, that's great. And then if I have an interview scheduled, I try to send the value validation project to the interviewer calculated in a calculated way. So I try to send it to them with just enough time for them to see it and maybe glance over it, but not enough time for them to like really go through it in a deep dive without me being there to explain it. So if you have like a 10 a.m. interview, maybe I'm sending it at 4 p.m. the next or the previous day. And if you have like a 4 p.m. interview, maybe I'm sending it, 9, 10 a.m. day of the interview. And then VVPs can also be used after the fact. So if you want to kind of solidify your candidacy, or if you feel like the interview like could have gone a little bit better, your value wasn't clear, sending a VVP after the interview or between interview stages can also be really helpful. What you don't want to be doing and what I don't recommend is creating value validation projects for like every single company that you apply to. That's a lot of time on your part. That's a lot of investment for a pretty low return. Like that's why we want to wait to get a commitment, or the caveat is like, if this is your dream company and you would do like anything to work there, like by all means, like if you think the time is worth it, please feel free to put together a value validation project. But that's a great question, and I hope that helps clarify when and where you should be using it.
Definitely, definitely. We had another question about COVID. And so the question is, so you have laid out this great strategy for us. How do you think COVID has impacted how this strategy works?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to share my full desktop again. So what I found just right off the bat is that this strategy has actually been more effective during COVID. We've actually seen a higher rate of people land jobs that come through our community. And I think the reason for that is twofold. One, when you look at the traditional process, it's just gotten more competitive. Like you look at how many people have been unemployed this year, and where do they go? They go right to online channels. So the data shows that before COVID, 75% of people were using online applications as their primary method to get new jobs. And 75% is like, it's a lot of competition when you think about how many millions of people are out there looking for jobs. But only 7% of applicants are using referrals as their channel. So, when you apply online, you have about a 2% chance of getting in the door just for an interview. Whereas on the flip side, referrals tend to make up 40% to 80% of hires, depending on the company, depending on the industry. So when you think about it that way, 75% of people are applying online, where you only have a 2% chance, versus 7% are getting in via referrals, where you have a 40 to 80% chance of getting hired. And so, the online applications that 75% is showing us, that's the obvious route for most people. So a lot of them are going that way. Now, what I'll say though, is that you need to focus on places where opportunities are available. So like a lot of industries have just shut down and stopped hiring or frozen hiring or are laying people off. So you need to understand, what that looks like. And so I am going to just pull up a couple of things here. So candor.co has a great dashboard. If you go to candor.co/hiring freezes, they have this dashboard, and I assume everybody can see my browser here. But basically you scroll down and they have this whole spreadsheet of people coming in and basically self-submitting the status of their company. So you can see all these, like, 1Password has a hiring freeze, and then, so on and so forth. And you can actually search for, up at the top here, there's a search functionality where you can search for your company. So I could type in like Microsoft, and then all of the, you may have to dig through here a little bit, but Microsoft, will have some attributions here. And you can actually do this. You can look at it by industry. They've broken it out. So if I just zoom out here a little bit, we can see, through all these industries, who's mostly hiring, and who's mostly laying people off or freezing hiring. JobScan.co also has one. I think it's called the ultimate list of who's hiring. They have pretty much the same type of thing. I think they just have more sources and more jobs. Pretty similar type of deal. So why am I showing you this? Well, when we choose those 10 to 15 target companies, we want to make sure that there's opportunity there, right? We don't want to just like apply somewhere and hope that they're hiring and they don't have a freeze or layoffs. We want to check and we want to make sure that this company is in fact hiring for the types of roles that we're looking for. And you can see, like, they have the departments here. So design, engineering, like, they're all hiring. So for this company, 1A Product Ventures, if you're looking for an engineering role or a design role, you could feel confident adding them into your target list of companies. So that's something that I would think about when you're creating your target list. But at the end of the day, what I think the silver lining is that virtual relationship building has always been a thing. I think most of us have just thought that relationships had to be built in like a 30-minute Zoom coffee. Like, that's how like networking happened, or you went to like a career fair or a meetup, and that's where networking happened. And really, networking is less about like going to those events and shaking everybody's hands, and it's more about like the one-to-one connection and creating value for people. And you can do that online. You can do that, through email, through LinkedIn, through these other platforms. And we've seen a big rise of that. And so I think a lot of people are going to find that their skill set has been broadened through COVID, because that's now more of a necessity than, a nice to have as it was before. But overall, the job market, that with jobs that are being filled via referral, is only growing during COVID. A lot of companies are still hiring. A lot of industries are still thriving. You just have to focus on those industries, and then you have to avoid the online applications if you want to have a shot.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I know we're over time. Do you have time for one more question, Austin?
Yeah, we can do a couple more if you want. No worries.
Okay, great. So this is a very good question. So we talked a lot about, reaching out to people in the actual positions listed at companies you want to work for. So there may or may not be positions open that would be relevant for you to apply for at those companies, right? Does it make sense to invest more time and effort when there's an actual position available, or not necessarily?
Yeah, so I view my 10 to 15 companies in my target list sort of like I did when I applied to college. So I applied to 13 schools. I don't know if that's standard or low or high these days, but the way I viewed my schools was, I had my stretch schools. Like, I'll send that application to, Princeton and see what happens. I have my middle of the road company or colleges, which, are great schools still, and I'd love to go there. And then I have my safety schools where, like, if everything else blows up in my face, I always know I'll have a chance there. And so I kind of view the companies in that same lens. And so there's two things I want to mention. So we have our stretch companies, which are essentially your dream companies. We have our middle of the road companies, which are stepping stones into those dream companies, but still places you'd be excited about. Safety companies, a bit different. There's no such thing as a company where, I know I can get a job there if all else fails. Like, that's typically not the case for most of us. But instead, I like to have three companies that and I don't mean this to sound crass, but I just care less about. And why do I have those on my list? Well, this is a new process for a lot of us. And I talked about, A/B testing email templates and having more conversations to get better. Well, if you can do that in a low stakes environment with companies that you care less about, you make those mistakes and you have that freedom to test. And so if you actually go from low priority to high priority, you're able to, give yourself some flexibility to fail and to experiment and to see what works for you. And then as you get to those companies that you really care about, you have this process ironed out and you have some confidence there. So I think that's worth noting. To answer your question, what I would say is, if a company is a stretch company, if it's or a true dream company, even if they don't have roles open right now, it's still worth going after them. So to share a little bit of a story, a friend of mine, his company was hiring. And so his VP announced that role opening internally at like a weekly team meeting. And she said, if you want to apply, or somebody who wants to apply, send them my way. And so this was at a big company. They have a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. So, going through creating the job description and HR approval and budgeting, the role wasn't posted online for another month and a half. So what's happening in that month and a half lag? Well, everybody who is either an internal employee or is referred by an internal employee, they're all getting in the door for an interview way before anybody can even see that this job is posted online. That is essentially an example of the hidden job market, if anybody's heard of that. Like, that's what that is. And so the only way that you're going to be able to access that is if you already have the relationships at that company. And the only way you're going to have those relationships is if you go out there and build them before the role is available. So we don't, again, want to do this for every single company, because, we want to be going after roles that are available right now. But if there's a company that you would truly like, it doesn't matter if it's 3 months or 6 months or 8 months or 2 years from now, like if you got a job there, you would be set and over the moon. Like, it's absolutely worth going and building the relationships proactively, because great companies are always growing. They're always hiring, if not now, at some point. So that's how I would think about the target companies, and specifically how I would focus my time and efforts on, open roles versus not.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're way over time, so I want to be really respectful of your time. There are more questions, but everybody can see Austin has put up his email address for you. So if you have a question, you can write to him directly. Also, check out cultivatedculture.com. Austin, thank you so much for being here. This has been so helpful to so many people. And we are going to be sending around the recording. So thank you, Austin. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We hope everyone stays safe and stays healthy.
Thank you all so much for having me. And yeah, if anybody has questions, feel free to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I dropped my link in the chat. But thank you all so much for having me. And yeah, Marnie, as you said, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great week.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.